thing, because I've been sitting here worrying for judgmental dusting mother who's been sent away. Don't come back until you can be nice to me about my house that I'm happy living in.
And why have you worried about that?
I'm worried about it because I'd like her to be forgiven for not being in a position of being able to understand that the child is now in a position of having let all of that go. And maybe they could understand her not being in that position yet and feeling maybe she feels judged that she didn't bring you up properly because you're living in a house with dust. And you can say, but I love you, mother, anyway, for that.
And all of what you just described to me is what I would call the natural love path. What people do, skipping over the real emotions. The real emotion, if your mother constantly criticises you, then it's an indication that she does not love you yet. Now that needs to be addressed. And if she's going to continually criticise you and expect to walk in your door, then you allowing her to walk in your door is also allowing all the criticism.
But if I was loving to her, I wouldn't let her consistently criticise me. I would say it straight away that...
And what if she just completely overrid that, and every time she walked in the door she still criticised you? What would you do then?
Okay, well, that would probably be different if it
Well, that's what I'm describing.
Okay.
Does that make sense? If a mother constantly walks in the door, criticises you every single time, you've talked to her about it, and she still criticises you, she doesn't want to change. She doesn't want to become more loving, right? So what are you going to do about it?
Ban her, no, forgive her.
But can you see that you can ban her and forgive her?
You can do both.
Yeah.
One is about allowing unloving treatment of yourself, and the other is about giving the gift of forgiveness to her and yourself. Now, you may forgive her, but still say, you can't cross my threshold, Mum.
While this is happening.
I do love you, and that's why you can't. Because even if you've worked through everything about her criticism and it doesn't even affect you, you still allowing her to criticise you is actually allowing her to continue in a state of error that's not loving. The most loving thing to do is to confront the error.
Yeah. And the reason why you bring it up is because of your fear, because you're a mum.
Yeah, sure.
And you wouldn't like your children saying that to you.
Well, personally, I'd find it fine. I just think there's a big responsibility on parents.
I'm sorry, I can't agree you find it fine. Because if you found it fine, you would have no trouble with my initial comment.
Yeah, yeah.
Does that make sense? But
it's where you break into the what sounds like a bit of a vicious circle of bringing up your children without criticising them for making squeaking noises on the violin. And I mean, I was really, really lucky, but I can hear everybody else saying, well, I gave that up really quickly because my parents were saying, God, what a horrible noise. That you learn from your children, presumably, as you... I've lost it.
I don't feel we need to learn from our children. We do learn from our children, but we don't need to, in the sense that we could actually embrace love, truth and humility as parents without having children if we decided to do so. The problem for many parents is they don't decide to do so. They actually decide to treat their children unlovingly, sometimes unwittingly, but many times not. They decide to treat their children unlovingly, and then they hope their children forgive them later. Now, many children find that very hard to forgive them later, because for many parents, they purposefully chose to take the actions they took to harm their children, and then they want their children to forgive them without the parent being sorry or repentant for their actions that they've taken towards their children. It's far better if the parent can learn to be repentant and sorry for the actions they've taken towards their children, and then they won't expect their children to forgive them at any point in time. And ironically, because they don't expect it, they'll highly likely be forgiven at some point in time. Whenever we have an expectation of another person to act lovingly, when we have been unloving to them, we are being hypocritical, and we are also not being loving. So if I treat you badly and then I expect you to forgive me, I am not treating you lovingly in that moment. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I am now having an expectation upon you to put up with my unloving behaviour without me adjusting my behaviour. That is an unloving act. And if you were in a state of love, you would confront that in me. You would actually say, no, I'm not going to put up with that unloving behaviour anymore from you, even though I love you. And in fact, because I love you, I am not going to put up with this unloving behaviour from you anymore. Does that make sense?
Shame we don't all know this before we get to be parents.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. And the reality is that even though we didn't know it, now that we're learning it, we can still apply the same principles now. So we can admit to our children the mistakes that we've made, and when they criticise us for those mistakes, we can absorb the criticism rather than attacking them or saying you should forgive me or anything else. We can absorb the criticism because we know the damage that we've done. If we're sorry for what we've done, we will do that. And when we do that, it has a powerful effect on our children. They automatically change as a result of our desire to be repentant. The key thing to remember as a parent is if you desire to be repentant, rather than demanding forgiveness from your child, you will do much better. As soon as you demand forgiveness from your child, you are now not being loving, and you are also at the same time demanding something that you have not personally done. Like you are demanding they forgive you while you have not forgiven others, obviously. Otherwise, you would allow the process of their lack of forgiveness to go on because you realise the damage you have done. We need to, as parents, all understand that when we demand from our children things, we are actually placing our children in this terrible position in that we treat our children badly oftentimes, sometimes like without meaning to, other times on purpose. We treat our children badly, and then later we're asking them or expecting them to forgive us when we ourselves have not changed the reason why we've treated them badly. And to me, it doesn't make any sense as a parent if I expect my children to forgive me while I personally have not changed the reason why I treated them badly inside of me. How easy are they going to find it to forgive me? They're going to have to be very spiritually developed to forgive me, even though I am not sorry for what I've done. If we can make forgiveness much easier, the way we make it much easier is when we are sorry for what we have done, then other people will find it much easier to forgive us for what we've done.